Hello everyone, and thank you all for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Catherine and I'm a project coordinator at EFMD. EFMD is a global network of management development institutions and is one of the partners in the IBE ReGloMi project. So IBE ReGloMi is a 3-year EU-funded initiative that brings together 5 universities and EFMD. The objective of the project is to bring an innovative approach to the integration of internationalisation, ethics, responsibility and sustainability, known as ERS, and social entrepreneurship in business education, through a set of tools that were developed during the project, including 15 future-oriented graduate attributes, guidelines for developing appropriate intended learning outcomes, key principles for innovative pedagogical approaches, and a continuing professional development programme. All of the project's results can be found on the website if you're interested in accessing these tools. So, as well as being a global network, EFMD is also an internationally recognised accreditation body, which brings a different perspective to the project, one that is focused on how aspects such as internationalisation and ERS are reflected and assessed in the quality of programmes and courses. So today's webinar is dedicated precisely to these topics, which is exploring course design through the lens of internationalisation, ERS and accreditation, and sharing how these dimensions are assessed and encouraged within quality agencies. So I will now hand you over to my colleague Christophe, who will talk to you in more detail about the topic of today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I will now take over. I am Christophe Terrasse and I work for EFMD, which is a partner of the IBE ReGloMi project. EFMD, you may not be familiar with us, but we are a large network of schools of business and higher education institutions active in management. And we are also one of the 3 accreditation globally recognized, meaning one of the 3 in the world that deliver accreditation of quality of management education. So now I will try to discuss with you some of the findings that we see during our accreditations about internationalization and ERS. So what will we do in this webinar? We will see and I will discuss with you how accreditation agencies judge the quality of courses, how to embed 2 dimensions, which are internationalization and ERS in the courses. And the last part is that we all try to go well, but we often make some mistakes. We often have false ideas about what internationalization is, about what it means to be ethical, to be responsible, and to be sustainable. And I will share with you the most frequent misconception that we often find in our reviews. So let's start and let's give the word to some of the students that cooperated with us in this IBE ReGloMi project. And we asked them basically what comes to their mind when we speak about accreditation. And here is what they said.
Learning outcomes.
High quality education.
Employability.
Academic excellence.
Standards. Institutional reputation.
This is it. This is many different things, and indeed institutional reputation is one thing, but let's go a little bit further. And when we speak about accreditation, we have to see that it is 2 main dimensions. The first one is that accreditation is, of course, a recognition of the excellence of a school, the excellence of an institution, or the excellence of a program. But this is also, and this is most important, a quality improvement tool that consolidates the strong points, but that also helps to correct the mistakes, to improve and to correct the mistakes that we do when we are developing courses or programs. So let's have a look inside and how works an accreditation agency. And the first thing that I would like to discuss with you and to share with you is that accreditation is mission-driven. Mission-driven, everybody hears these terms, and what does it mean? It simply means that you should always think and always remember what the mission, what the goal of your institution is. And this has a practical consequence, which is that the evaluation will be customized to what you want to do. So in other terms, we look what you want to do and we see whether you do it well. And it means that the assessment will be different from one institution to the other depending on their mission and depending on their context. This is basically what it means to be contextualized. Another thing that I want to share with you is that accreditation often follow the same patterns. And you see here in the center of this diagram, which represent the way and the different areas we are checking, there are many, and we have the faculty, we have the students, we have the program, we have, of course, at the center, the context and the strategy. Remember what I just told about mission-driven. And we have three, what we call interconnected and transversal aspects, which are extremely important for us, and they are the internationalization on one side, you see it on the right of the picture, and the ethics, responsibility and sustainability at the bottom of this slide. And the third one is the connection with practice. What does it mean to be a transversal dimension? It means that we first look at what inside the big circle, which I just told you about, programs, students, faculty, resources, context and strategy, etc., etc. And then we look also at how international they are and how fit they are to promote ethics, responsibility and sustainability. It means that this dimension of internationalization is evaluated not only independently but also in connection with all the other aspects of the school, about the content, about the faculty, about the students, about the programs, about the resources, about executive education, and so on and so on. And this is what it means to be a transversal dimension. So now we've spoken before we speak about how we see the internationalization. I would like to share with you what internationalization is not. And here I would like to address three misconceptions that often comes to our mind when we speak about internationalization. And when we go into schools, when we speak with colleagues, when we speak with friends or with faculty, they often say, oh, my course is international. And when we dig a little bit further, we realize that it's not always obvious. And they say, my course is international because I deliver it in English. Well, first misconception. This is not because it is in English that it makes it totally international. You can speak about very, very domestic things and speak about them in English. It has no direct consequences or no automatic relationship. Another misconception is my course is international because all courses are international in our institution. This is the second misconception. It is not because your colleagues are doing international courses that your course is automatically international. And beware of institutions that brand themselves very international. In many cases, they are not that international. And the third one is typically, I have X% of foreign students. Well, of course, it does help, but we will see that it is not the guarantee that your course becomes international. You can make a very, let's say, French or Spanish or Italian course in front of foreign people. And the fact that your audience is international does help because, of course, they will ask many different questions, they will confront many different points of views, but this is not a guarantee, and this is not automatically makes your course as an international one. So let's go a little bit further and let's ask about misconception about internationalization, and again asking our same students who participated into our IBE ReGloMi project.
Only means sending people abroad.
It's just about the students or staff mobility.
Internationalization is optional.
Accreditation and internationalization are unrelated.
Online connections aren't part of internationalization.
And it could go ever and ever. But true, let's pick two things which are very important. Internationalization is not about mobility only. Of course, you have a part of mobility, but it is not restricted to exchanges and travels. And the other one that I would like to add is that internationalization is not passport counting. It's not because you have lots of different nationalities that it makes your course international. So let's go for a final quiz and let's ask people what percentage of international students is needed for accreditation.
10, 50, 20, 0.
No good answer here again. It could be 0, it could be 20, it could be 50 or 60 or anything that pops into your mind. There is no standard threshold for internationalization, simply because this is what we were mentioning before. Internationalization is not passport counting. So these are two connected but not equivalent words. You need on one side international people, but does not mean that they have an international passport. So when you assess the internationalization of your course, here are the self-reflection questions that you should ask yourself. And you will see that it's not only what is the color of the passport of your students. The first one is the quality of the international learning experience. And this is what we assessed most frequently. Which means, what is the international learning experience? Do you use international teaching materials? Do you use international content, international examples, or do you use case studies which develop in another country or which gives you an international perspective? Do you have international and diverse team of faculty? Don't you all say the same thing, or on the contrary, do you try to bring a portfolio of different international examples to your students? Does your course help for language skills development? This is very important, in particular in non-English speaking countries. And of course, the enrichment brought by students. And is your course attended by a diverse group of students? Diverse in terms of nationality, diverse in terms of background, or simply diverse in terms of expectation. And all that and the combination of all these points help us to think that indeed your course is international. But this is not all, and we are looking at other points, which are the quality of the international partners and exchanges in your institution. Do you offer people the opportunity to study abroad, to work abroad, or to work with international people, to study in international environments? And do you prepare them basically to be good international managers? So you see, we look at the international content of the course, but also the international partnerships, the opportunities, all the doors that you open to your students. So at the end, they will be good and efficient international managers with skills, with attitudes, and with knowledge. And this is what we try to evaluate. So there are 5 things that we often get wrong. I was telling you that we try to do good, but sometimes there are some pitfalls and mistakes that we do. And here is curated, a self-selected choice of what things we do get wrong. The first one is using the same type of teaching method for everybody, assuming that all our students have the same background and expectation. So basically, it happens when we treat international students as a homogeneous group which react, expects, and does exactly the same thing. We all know that it's wrong, but sometimes we need to remember. The second mistake that we often see is to assume that all international students have the same English language proficiency, while this is not the case. In many countries, I'm a perfect example, in France, for example, we are not the best in teaching English, or at least English accent. Another mistake is to underestimate the prior learning. Keep in mind that all your students come from different backgrounds, and there was a life before they arrive in your courses. And during this life, of course, they learned quite a lot of things, they experimented quite a lot of situations, and they bring this diversity and this richness in your classroom. So you should take account of that and you should take advantage of this. The fourth mistake is ignoring the assessment challenge. And you need to keep in mind that in each country, the assessment methodologies, the assessment ways of doing things are different. So when you have some international students, they might be very uncomfortable with the way you are assessing them, with the way you are evaluating them, and you need to have that into account to avoid undesirable situations. And lastly, of course, there are many, many more, but I would like to point out the misaligned expectations. Keep in mind that all your students have different life paths, have different history and different expectations from your courses. So you should know them and you should incorporate some flexibility in the course you design so that everybody will take something positive from your lecture. So a quick checklist. There are many different aspects and I will not list them all. I will just show them on the screen. You don't need to have them all, but if you have known of them, then you should question yourself and realize that you could do better in terms of internationalization. Here they are, and here they were as suggested by our IBE ReGloMi project. So you see, it's not one thing, but many different things that you can put into your course to ensure that it is international. So it is now time to move to the second part of this webinar, which is how to assess ethics, responsibility, and sustainability, ERS. So the first thing is that we need to realize that there are two interconnected aspects into the ERS strategy. The first one lies at the structural and institutional level. It is about integrity, it's about plagiarizing, about misconduct. And part of the ERS depends on how your institution, how our institution itself works. It means that setting clear rules and creating a culture of integrity is an essential condition for having an ethical, responsible, and sustainable institution and program. So it means that university needs policies, systems to prevent what I was saying, plagiarism and academic misconduct, and to ensure that this ethical behavior is a shared responsibility across the whole of the institution. And then, and only then, you can work on the courses. And you need to make students aware of ERS, meaning to help them to see that every business decision has ethical, social, environmental effect. We need to show them that being responsible, being sustainable is part of their job. It's not just empty words, it's not just something extra, it is embedded into their job. And this is our responsibility to show them that and to make it embedded in the courses. And in conjunction to that, it is developing critical thinking. Critical thinking is often used as a kind of buzzword, but in fact, it is essential and it is crucial to encourage all students to ask questions, to find themselves looking at situations from different angles, and to think about the impact, the consequences of their choice. We need to teach them to connect with what is right and with what works right in practice. It's not only words, not only theory, it's also practice and facing the consequences of any choice. So, speaking about students, let's ask them again what they think about ERS and which are common false ideas about this topic.
Responsibility is only for leaders.
Sustainability only means protecting the environment.
If it's legal, it's ethical.
Ethics are only relevant in extreme situations.
We couldn't say it better. So, 3 things that we often get wrong to summarize. The first one, as a professor, as a faculty, is to ignore altogether the ethical dimension, saying, me, I'm a professor of marketing, of accounting, of finance, whatever, so my job is to teach marketing, and I'm not here to teach morals, or I'm not here to teach ethics. There are some colleagues in charge of that. This is wrong. Students should be aware that any management decision has some ethical consequences. The other mistake is to say, okay, I need to teach ERS because this is fashionable, so I will just scratch the surface so that I'm ticking the box and nobody could accuse me of ignoring ERS. And this is this checkbox approach. And this is also wrong because this is a reduction of what it really is. And the third mistake is to teach ERS as only a very theoretical aspect, ignoring that there are some real-world application. And again, this is wrong because ERS is not just theory, it is practical and day-to-day consequences. So it means that both theoretical discussion and case studies, practical example, should be applied. So now, what matters most in the ERS assessment? Well, you will see on this diapositive, on this slide, that we check how we incorporate ERS at all steps and at all aspects, in all aspects of the program, in the program objectives, in the ILOs, into the course design, whether this is a dedicated course, a special course of ethics, or if we transversally embed ERS, sorry for the typo in the mistakes, the pedagogy, how we complement what we teach by some hands-on application in the way we incorporate the diversity of our students in terms of cultures, in terms of perspectives, and in terms of topics, and also how we complement what happens in the classroom, but what happens outside of the classrooms, with internships, with activities, and with contact with the real world. We also check that we, as teachers, teach that all managerial choices carry ethical, responsible, and sustainable consequences. So it's not an empty word, it is directly connected to every discipline that we teach. I could give many examples. I will only give a couple of them in different disciplines. So, for example, you teach supply chain management. Well, this has ERS consequences about exploitation of workers. How do you deal with developing countries? How do you share the wealth? How do you take care of the consequences of the production on the environment, and so on and so on. You teach marketing? Yeah, this is also connected with ERS, about the way you advertise, the way you communicate, about all the possibilities and what some companies are doing in terms of greenwashing, for example, or pinkwashing, or any other sustainable washing. You teach finance? Obviously, you need to take and to make your students aware about the consequences in terms of ERS, about the role of international financial systems, about financial decision impacts us and impacts other communities around the world. We could go further and further, but think about your own particular disciplines and check that on top of the content, on top of the knowledge, on top of the skills that you transmit to the students, to your students, you also make sure that they take into account all the ERS consequences. So before we close, this is the end of this webinar, which are the key takeaways that I want to share with you and that I want to remind you. The first thing is that internationalization is diversity and it does take many forms. So you should combine the content, the examples, and the illustration to make sure that internationalization is at the root of your course. The second thing is that ERS is not an empty word. It's not only a theoretical concept, but it always has practical implication. And lastly, you should help students recognizing their own impact. Try to make them think about the global, the ethical dimension of their actions and decisions. And this is precisely the objectives of the IBE ReGloMi project. So I would like to say goodbye to you, but before the end of this seminar, we would like to share with you how accreditation made a difference. And for this, I went to two partners from Zoid University, and they tell us how accreditation has changed things in terms of internationalization and ERS. I leave them the floor. Manon and Effier, please, this is your turn.
For us, the EFMD accreditation process has really helped us in this, because the EFMD has clear pillars, amongst which internationalization and ERS, and it really helps you to think of, okay, what is our vision with regard to these topics. It's also a good way or a good starting point to discuss that with your team, with your faculty. Okay, how do we see in our business school ERS and internationalization? That gives direction, and then it also helps in the execution of your program. So, okay, if we have this vision, okay, rethink also with the criteria of the EFMD in mind. Yeah, it gives you direction.
It really comes down to the vision that you have, and really bringing focus, bringing direction, as Manon already explained. But how does this really work? And how does this really work with your team? And how does this really work with the students? Because everything that we do, in the end, we do this for our students. We do this for our students to become resilient leaders in the end. So an accreditation process really directs you, guides you to that process to really have a good focus on these topics, have that conversation with each other, make very concrete KPIs, have that vision towards the future even more. Yeah, and the international benchmark in that. So being part of such an important international accreditation like the EFMD, it really opens up the world. It inspires you with what's going on in the rest of the world, and in the end, we help each other in that way.
Thank you, Manon, and thank you, Effie, of course, for the kind words, but also for sharing your experience with us. So as a conclusion, it's now time to close this webinar. We thank you, but I would like to remind two things. First of all, that none of this would have been possible without the financial support of the European Union, which financed this project, and also that you can find many more resources to modernize your course, to improve it, or to strengthen it. And all these resources are available on the project, the IBE ReGloMi project website, that you can find at www.ibe/reglomi.eu. Thank you very much, and we hope it has been useful.